Hello, welcome to chapter 1 of Interpersonal Communication. Just as kind of a reminder, there are the videos here. This is where this video will be. And there's also the readings for this chapter, which kind of go along with this. If you don't have the Floyd textbook, totally fine. We'll get most of the stuff here out of listening to the lectures and then the readings. So hopefully that will save you some money on a textbook. So let's go ahead and get started. So our agenda for today, so why do we communicate? The nature of communication, how we communicate interpersonally, and how we can build our communication competence. So why do we communicate? Well, we communicate to meet physical needs, relational needs, identity needs, spiritual needs, and instrumental needs. So our physical needs might be, we're cold. So we would tell someone, hey, I'm cold, can I borrow a blanket? Your relational needs, so your need to build relationships and have friends and have family. So things to build those up. Sorry, the cat's trying to eat the microphone. So this could be like simple things of, hey, insert friend's name here. Do you want to go out and go to a movie or go to the park? When you tell people about yourself, self-disclosure, those are filling relational needs. Your identity needs, so your need to be known and have an identity. So identity needs could be like, oh, well, we identify them as the funny person, so we laugh at their jokes. Their spiritual needs. So this is why people would maybe go to church or other religious organizations and talk with people there, and you communicate that way. And then your instrumental needs are more of your daily needs. So your instrumental needs are just like talking. So when you go to Safeway or Walmart and someone says, hello, how are you today? You say, fine, thank you. And yourself? Or when you're going through a drive-through, you'd say, may I have insert whatever here, please? But those are your daily instrumental needs. The nature of communication. So there's 3 models that scholars have used to show how communication works. The action model or the linear model, the interaction model, and then the transaction model. Typically, we use the transaction model nowadays because the action and interaction model are a bit outdated, but I'll talk about them briefly. So the action model says communication is a one-way process, hence being linear. So someone formulates an idea. So if I'm the source, I'm thinking of an idea in my head, and then I'm going to encode it, that idea, into, let's say, English, because that's the main language I speak, into the form of a message. So how am I going to encode this idea that I'm picturing in my head into an English word? Okay, well, I'm thinking of cat, so I know English word for the fluffy animal that is across the room is cat. So I'm going to say, how can I send this to people? Well, I can speak it out loud. I can type it out, however. And then it's sent through that communication channel. So in this case, voice, or through typing, or through video, or through insert whatever channel here. TV, radio, face-to-face. Those are all communication channels. And then the receiver will decode that message. So you will hear the word cat. And then in your head, you will decode it and say, okay, a fluffy 4-legged animal that tends to chase mice or whatever. And then you're probably going to picture that cat or whatever in your head. Maybe it's a black cat, maybe it's a gray cat, maybe it's, an animated cat or whatever. But your interpretation of that is then affected by quote unquote noise. It could be physical noise, it could be psychological noise, but it is affected by noise. So if there's a jackhammer going on outside, maybe you didn't hear cat, maybe you heard bat, And then you're picturing a baseball bat in your head and you're like, that doesn't make sense for what we were talking about. Why did she go from like, you know, good pets to baseball bats? Or maybe she thinks like the little black flying rat things of bats make good pets. Huh, who knows? So here's just what it could look like. So your sender sending the message through a specific channel to a target that is affected by noise, physical, psychological, physiological noise, like if you're hungry, or semantic noise. Maybe you don't quite understand what they're talking about due to a language barrier. And then you have the interaction model, which is a two-way process. So it's basically the action model plus you get feedback through verbal and nonverbal behavior. So the person would respond and be like, wait, I heard bat, or what are we talking about? So then the sender would be like, oh no, cat, like C-A-T, not B-A-T. And then the context of your communication will affect its meaning in the interaction model. So if we look at this, we say, okay, we have sender and receiver and sender. So everyone in that interaction is playing both the roles of sender and receiver of messages. And we have all this noise going around, the semantic, physical, physiological, psychological noise. But we also have this field of experience and this context of what is happening. So is the context a school interaction? Is the context a personal interaction? Is the context, I'm literally just trying to order a caramel frappuccino at Starbucks? And then our last one is the transaction model. So it's multi-way. So it's basically this interaction model plus, you know, we're both simultaneously doing all these things. So instead of just sending, receiving, and then sending back again, it's all happening simultaneously and the communication is flowing in all directions at once. So we're having this field of experience, this context. We have the relational dimensions. So, you know, you're not going to tell the same story to your best friend as you do to your grandma, right? You're going to change it and change how you word it and what you emphasize based on the relational dimension that you have with that person. And it's that constant influence. So that constant feedback you're sending through body language and through facial expressions, trying to show that yes, you understand by nodding, or by showing that you don't understand by raising an eyebrow or getting a weird look on your face. But communication as a whole, many characteristics. So it relies on multiple channels. So you're not always just communicating through voice or through video or through text. You know, you're also communicating through body language. If you're in front of someone, you're communicating through body language if you're on video. It passes through our perceptual filters. So we all have life experiences that help shape who we are, and those give us our perceptual filters. So, you know, take my sister and I, for example. You know, we are raised in the same household, but we still have different experiences. So if we go to the mall and, you know, see something going on or see a specific type of person there or a specific, you know, insert whatever here, we will still perceive it differently because, yeah, we were raised the same, but we went to different colleges. We have different degrees. We have different experiences outside of our childhood. So I have no idea what the cat was just doing, but it was kind of weird. Communication is given its meaning by people. So technically everything is, you know, arbitrary and has no meaning until we assign it meaning. How many of you guys read that book, Frindle, as a kid? You know, they created this new word for a pencil, you know, called it a frindle, and therefore that word then had meaning. But to the people who, you know, didn't know that, it literally had no meaning. Same with, you know, if someone is speaking in a language we don't understand, there's not we don't have any meaning to give it. We can only go by body language in the context of the interaction that we can understand. But communication also has literal meanings, but also figurative meanings too, and relational implications, because once we say something, we can never take it back. We cannot, rewind and say, ooh, I don't actually want to say that to that person because they had a bad reaction. No, everything we say and everything we do, how we act, has a relational implication. It will affect our relationship with that person from that moment on. Hence why people say first impressions are really important, because it has those relational implications. Communication also sends messages whether we mean it to or not. So how you dress, how you look, how you smell, all sends messages. Some of those things are very intentional. Maybe you dress in a specific way to send a message, or maybe you wear a wedding ring to show very intentionally that you are married. But sometimes things are more unintentional. Whether we look a little disheveled, or maybe we forgot to put on deodorant that day, it does send an unintentional message. And it is governed by rules. But these rules aren't universal. They have to be agreed upon by the groups and by cultures that are in this communication interaction. So in some places, the rule is when you first meet someone, you shake their hand. In some places, you hug them. In some places, you kiss them on one cheek or both cheeks. So moving on. So what channel would we use or should we use in different communication situations? Obviously, the most effective one tends to be face-to-face, because it's synchronous, it's happening at the same time. We can convey a lot of information. We can get a lot of information to that person through both our words and our body language, how we're dressed, what perfume or cologne we wear, how we wear our hair, etc. And we tend to have quite a bit of control over the message we're sending, because we can think about what we're going to say and then we say it. But we don't have super high control, because it's happening in real time. We can't pause and give ourselves 5 minutes to think about something if someone's sitting in front of us waiting for an answer immediately. But we can do that, in email and voicemail. You get a lot of attention. So when you're face-to-face, you have a lot of control over the receiver's attention. At least you hopefully do. You hope you're not looking down at their phone while you're trying to talk to them. However, face-to-face tends to not be as effective for highly detailed messages. So I guess it says massages there. No, it means it's supposed to be messages. So if you're trying to give someone a lot of detail, most people will ask for that in writing, because they want, maybe a bullet point list to say, okay, boom, 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 I did all of these things perfect. But if you're just telling it to them, people are likely to forget. Telephone, teleconference, or video conference, it is also synchronous, so it's also happening in real time. You may not get as much information through body language and stuff, because either on the telephone, you can't see them at all, and through video conference, you're maybe only seeing them from the bust up, so like the shoulders up. You tend to have about the same amount of control over the message as face-to-face, because it's happening in real time. You have less control over the receiver's attention, because if you're on the phone, you can be doing other things. If you're on Zoom or another type of video conference, they can have other tabs open. They could be watching YouTube while you're talking. And once again, because it's happening in real time and it's just voice, people may not be writing it down. It's not as effective for very detailed messages. Voicemail, also not very effective for detailed messages, because you have a time limit. And not very many people check their voicemail anymore, honestly. It's hard to have control over their attention, but you have a lot of control over the message, because you can plan out exactly what you're going to say. and it's asynchronous email, asynchronous. You know, you may not be able to convey a lot of richness of your info, but you can get highly detailed with it. You know, email, they're not seeing your face or your body language, they're not hearing your voice, so they might be missing out on some of the context, but they're getting a lot of content. Text message, Twitter, the synchronicity of it can vary because, you know, some people might not check their text messages all day till the end of the day, and some people always have their phone on them. But it tends to be very good for brief messages. So if you're just saying, hey, what's up? It's probably better to text someone that than, you know, have to call them every time or show up at their house to ask. And then handwritten, typed, hard copy, kind of like email. Once again, asynchronous, can't convey a lot of richness of info because you don't have the voice, the body language there, but you have a lot of control over the message, and you can get very detailed. So, some myths about communication. Not everyone is a communication expert. You know, for most people, it's something they have to practice at a lot. I'm sure you can tell in, you know, this, I've definitely done video lectures before, but I'm not an expert at it. This is not my expertise in communication, though it is a form of communication. But it takes practice. Not everyone is born a communication expert. We have to learn, you know, the tricks of doing it and how to interact in society. Communication will also not solve any problem. It can solve a lot of problems, potentially even most problems, but not every single one. Because sometimes people don't want to work with you. They don't want to make it work. You know, in a business context, in a personal relationship context, and communication's not going to solve that. You can talk until you're blue in the face, but some people just, they're not going to listen. They don't want to listen. They don't want anything to do with, you know, you or your company or whatever. You know, communication can't break down. Even a lack of communication, someone not talking to you is still saying something. Communication is inherently good. It's neutral. It can be used for good. It can be used for bad. There are great speakers who have convinced people of horrible things. There are great speakers who have changed the world in very positive ways. Communication is just a tool that people can use for good or evil. A kitchen knife is just a tool that you can use to spread butter, or you could, you know, stab your roommate with it. A kitchen knife is not inherently good or bad, it just is. And communication, more communication is not always better, because you can definitely have, you know, information overload. I'm sure you've had that in classes where on the first day you felt like your brain is, you know, dribbling out of your ear because there's just been so much information, so much communication. So sometimes it's better to do it in smaller little snacks, I guess. Info snacks. I heard that somewhere. I think it was a YouTuber, but I like it. But specifically for interpersonal communication is communication between two people within the context of that relationship, and that, as it evolves, helps them negotiate and define their relationship. You know, you can have interpersonal communication with people that you don't really have a quote unquote relationship with, you know, someone you're sitting next to on an airplane. That's still interpersonal communication, because the context of your relationship is we're sitting next to each other on a plane, and as it evolves and as time goes on, as you're sitting on that plane, you've defined your relationship as, yeah, this is someone I sat next to on the plane, or yeah, give me your Facebook or give me your phone number so, you know, after this plane lands or whatever, we can continue communication because I like talking to you because you seem like an interesting person. It's pervasive, so it's all around us. It can improve our relationships if done well, or it can destroy our relationships if done wrong. And it can improve our health just by, when you have friends and people around you, I guess, to an extent, some people are definitely more introverted and don't need people around as much, but definitely having people who you can talk to and can interact with definitely makes you feel better. So how can we build our communication competence? So if you're a competent communicator, you are effective and appropriate. So when you're effective, it's saying, did your communication achieve its goal? So if I was trying to sell this pair of shoes, was my communication effective? And I can show this by, yes, I sold this pair of shoes to the customer. And then, is it appropriate? So did your communication comply with the rules and expectations of the social situation? Sometimes it's harder to be appropriate than it is to be effective. Because if you're in a situation, a social situation where you're not sure about how things should go, you might mess it up a bit. Have you ever gone in for a handshake when someone else goes in for a hug? There was obviously a disconnect in the appropriateness of that communication interaction. So the one person thought, okay, a handshake is appropriate because, I don't know this person, or maybe I don't want them to hug me. And the other person didn't quite understand that. Maybe they thought it was appropriate for them to give a hug because they're just a touchy person, and misread that situation. So think of a recent interaction that you have had with friend, family, stranger. Did you and your communication partner use effective and appropriate communication? Did you meet the goal of the interaction? And did you follow the social norms? The last time you talked to, a mild acquaintance or whatever, and you said, hey, how are you? The socially appropriate response is, I'm fine, thanks, and yourself? Did they respond inappropriately as, an acquaintance and say, actually, my life kind of sucks right now. These are the 16 million things that have gone wrong. And you're like, whoa, dude, we are not good enough friends for that. So this video is in your Canvas below this one if you'd like to go and watch that. But competent communicators share many characteristics. So they can self-monitor and think, okay, am I doing what I should be doing? Am I acting effectively and appropriately? They can adapt to different situations. They are empathetic. They have cognitive complexity, which means they can find alternate explanations for things. So maybe one of their coworkers comes in and seems kind of down or not talkative, which might be strange. Instead of saying, oh, well, they're just, an a-hole today or whatever, they can say, I wonder what happened on the way over here this morning that would cause them to be this way. And they also practice ethics and communicate ethically, which means they are not trying to deceive people or cheat people out of money or, do something that would promote harm or, anything bad for others or their communication partners. And then particularly for online, which we've been seeing more of, particularly this year, go 2020, competent online communicators do these things. So they're aware of the potential for misunderstanding. Maybe someone isn't aware that you were being sarcastic. So how do you show that you're being sarcastic? On the internet, typically you do \s to show sarcasm. Presuming that everything is permanent and nothing is secret. Yeah, nothing is secret on the internet. Everything you post, can probably be found again. There's archive sites that archive, blogs and other social media. So just don't put anything out there that you wouldn't want, someone else to see, that you wouldn't want a potential employer to see. And you avoid communicating in anger because, everything on the internet is permanent and nothing really remains a secret for long. But the good thing about online communication is that, you know, before you post it, you can wait 24 hours and say, okay, do I still really want to post this? You know, am I less angry now? And here's just a fun little video if you'd like to watch it. You know, what do you think our future would look like if we have technology like this? How would our interpersonal communications change? Some things to think about. You know, what you post never goes away. And have you ever Googled yourself? And if so, what comes up? Is there anything there that you wouldn't want, you know, a potential employer to see? So if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can shoot me a message through Canvas. You can send me an email. My email is there in Canvas under Meet Your Teach. But I look forward to seeing you guys again soon. So have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks.